What's going on, everybody? The Boston Celtics take down the Cavaliers in the front end of their home and home series. Second game coming up on Thursday night. And it's mailbag time. Beanie Boys are in the house. We're hitting the Discord. We're hitting Twitter. We got it all for you coming up next here on Green with Envy. What up? What up? What up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today in the matching beanie and robe combo, we've got my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, and of our not one, not two, not three, maybe four, maybe five. I kind of lost track. Five-time Green with Envy ATX Men's League champion. It's the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Still glowing after that victory from last night. I had to rock the beanie because it's a little bit cold. I have the robe on because I didn't go to work today. Called in sick. We were talking before
So
we
you got to
started
play the part.
recording
Is
here.
that what you're doing here? You're playing the part of calling in sick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't get to bed until like 2 a.m. because of the men's league game, and then I stayed up to watch the Celtics. I recorded it. You kind of ruined it for me, telling me that we won the game at the game that we were playing. But it's okay. I was happy to watch the game. It was a fun game to watch. I'm excited to talk a little bit about that, and also excited to get into the Discord mailbag and then the Twitter mailbag, and just get into our bag.
Hell yeah, man. So just to kind of set it up here at the top, first off, we're gonna do a mailbag here for majority of this episode. So a lot of that's gonna come from our Discord page. And if you're saying Discord page, what Discord page? Number one, you haven't been listening. Number two, I've also been doing a bad job of promoting it at the top of the podcast. So
Same.
gonna do that right now. We have a Discord page for all of our Green with Envy kinfolk. So make sure that you are looking for that link. That link is going to be in our bios. It is going to be on the description page of the YouTube and on any of the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever else you may be listening to. You can find that link to come join us. It's a lot of fun. We'll make sure that we have some, direct contact with myself, Greg, Adam. We're always in the mix. And it's really fun getting some feedback and to hear what people are thinking, what people want us to talk about. And like I said, they're going to be a very direct part of the show. So we're going to get into that bag, into our bag, into the mailbag coming up here in just a few. But let's open this up just with talking about the front end of this home and home with the Cavs. Celtics win 120-113. We didn't do a post-game live last night, as we referenced kind of here. We had our own men's league championship to take down last night. Your boys got the dub. Picture was on IG. We'll post it on Twitter here in just a little bit so you guys can check out the squad flexing.
We got a
Flexing
squad.
with the championship. We do have a squad. If yo, let's pull a Suge Knight real quick. If you guys want the smoke, if you guys want to come out with all your little men's leagues teams, come on down to Austin, Texas. We'll ball up with you. I feel like you had something to say there, so that's why.
I have nothing to say. I mean, we could talk more about the teams if you want. I mean, we're a good squad, but let's talk about the real team.
Yeah, let's talk about the real squad here. So Celtics last night against the Cavs, 120-113. No Evan Mobley, which I want to come back to because I think this was last night a really fun game and a pretty well played game, in my opinion, on both sides. You got to see, some great Darius Garland play. Donovan Mitchell got really hot at certain stretches in this game. Jared Allen, I thought, was pretty impactful on both sides of the ball for the Cavs. And then the Celtics just played a really well-rounded game. So, Greg, let's go through it here. You did your grades last night at what, 2 in the morning? So a little groggy-eyed.
Oh,
Greg.
no, so if you check the timestamp there, I actually did it this morning at
This
9.
morning, okay.
I slept on it.
There you go.
And honestly, I think I graded a little bit easier when I woke up than I would have if I did it at 2 a.m.
I mean, this is an honor roll report card that we got today. All A's and B's for the Celtics last night. So I see a couple of A pluses in here, a bunch of A's, and only one B plus and one B. But I mean, honestly, I'm gonna have a hard time picking holes in it. So you tell me where you want to start with what you think stood out the most, because it felt like, like I said, a really solid night for a lot of different Celtics.
Yeah, I think I want to talk a little bit about the drop defense because I
Yeah.
think, in game 2 against the Cavs, it's going to be interesting to see if Joe Mazzulla makes any adjustments to that drop coverage. We were pretty much sitting in that deep drop with Porzingis or Horford sitting in the paint, Cornette sitting in the paint. I did kind of do my own numbers on how effective that drop defense was against Mitchell and Garland. So Mitchell was 4 for 9 against the drop for 11 points. Garland was 5 for 11 against the drop for 11 points. So 9 for 20 overall against the drop for 22 total points. So, although it felt like they were getting whatever they wanted, 45%, I believe that's what that comes out to. 45% for 22 points on 20 shots. You know what I mean? Basically a point per shot. So it's not horrible. If in the fourth quarter, I think the Celtics did a good job of trying to just make things a little bit more difficult on the Cavs by switching up those coverages.
Yeah.
Adam talked a little bit about that in his 10 takeaways here that I have pulled up on the screen right now. I think what we saw in that fourth quarter, where did he put it here? Adam put it towards the end, I guess. Switching up coverages. Yeah,
Yeah.
number 8 on Adam's 10 things. So one of the things I have it pulled up here on the screen for those of you that are listening, Adam says, and I'll read some quotes here from Adam. So speaking of defense coverages, the Celtics threw some curveballs down the stretch for the majority of the game. Mazzulla had his team switching 1 through 4 with the center playing drop defense. That's been the Celtics' primary defensive system all season, and for the most part, it's worked extremely well. However, the Celtics looking to pull away, create some wiggle room. They began switching up how they defended screening and handoff action. So I'm going to play some of those clips here for those of you that are kind of watching along. But one of the things that I really liked about that, and I'll replay this here. If you see on this first action, Tatum, right? They have Tatum covering Thompson. So Thompson being the primary screener in this lineup that they had, kind of, if you have Tatum covering the main screener, that kind of negates that drop coverage. It's easier to switch. If you Porzingis or Horford on them, it's a little bit more difficult. But putting someone as versatile as Tatum right there at the level, I think is a really nice change. They actually did this in the third quarter as well. I think Derek White, they had White start on a big man or Tatum starting a big man, but they did it a little bit earlier. So you see that Tatum coming up, putting a little bit of pressure. Drew Holiday also being a point of attack defender is able to switch on to a bruiser like Thompson. So I really like that little wrinkle they threw in there on this play right here. Let's see what we have going on. Once again, you have Tatum covering Jared Allen, right? So Jared Allen being the primary screener in this action. I don't know if he actually sets the screen. What the Cavs started to do to kind of negate the Celtics putting Tatum on the main screener was getting Allen away from the screening action and putting, I think, Dean Wade was involved in some of those actions here. Let's see. Yeah. So Allen, I think they go dribble handoff here. Yeah, so once again, Tatum being able to switch out rather than a Porzingis, I think makes it a lot easier for the Celtics there. And I think this one is a good example. They, as you see here on the screen, Tatum is covering Jared Allen, so they decide to put Dean Wade in the action instead of Jared Allen. They go dribble handoff here off the zoom action, and then Drew Holiday is just able to D up from that point forward. But I really like that the kind of curveballs that Adam referenced, that Mazzulla referenced before the season, defending that drop, defending that pick and roll versus just being in a traditional deep drop coverage. Yeah, but 9 for 20 for 22 points. I don't think that's nothing to write home about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a good example. That was a great breakdown. Like I think it's a good example of a little bit of cat and mouse game that you can see Joe Mazzulla. And we're going to talk about him with some of our mailbag questions here, starting to develop. Just like that's almost to me, that's a development of Joe Mazzulla as a coach, right? That's the most important thing that I'm taking away from that is that Mazzulla, number one, didn't feel the need to stick with something if it wasn't going to, like I said, it wasn't horrible, but if there was something more effective you can do, especially where he's talked about, having to combine analytics with context, right? So in those moments, it's, we can live with this through, 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, whatever. But come, crunch time, we need to have a different look that we can throw at guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And I think especially when you zoom out and you look at the fact that you're going to play Damian Lillard, the fact that you're going to play, Tyrese Maxey, like there's going to be a bunch of these guys for you to get to the NBA finals that you're going to have to go through. And so I think having those varied looks and knowing that you're going to start to feel comfortable, kind of maybe even switching that up, within quarters, being able to do it. I think that's a really nice step for the Celtics, and it was a really good adjustment for him to make. So, once again, Joe Mazzulla, I think he is developing. We'll talk more about him here, so I don't want to step on that too much. But you talked about like Drew Holiday. I thought Drew Holiday's defense was great last night. I mean, his Greece defense is always great. Him and Derek White, Stock Exchange had a very nice night last night. In the win against the Cavs. And I think, and Adam talked about this also going back to his 10 takeaways here. He highlighted a quote that Tatum had in the press conference where, he said, "I'm certain none of us are averaging career highs in points. It's for the betterment of the team." And this was the definition of that all around game for this team. I think you had 3 guys with 20 plus points. You had people spreading the wealth from assists, rebounding. Both Porzingis and Tatum had double-digit rebounds. This really was, and despite a really slow start, like this was, they got off to, I think, 1 of 10 shooting start from 3. And so this team being able to be resilient and bounce back from that, like that's different, right? There's some things that I think we've been able to point to throughout this first quarter of the season that were like, that little bit of that still feels the same. But let's not forget, there's a lot of this team that I think is definitively becoming different in a very positive way. And I think last night was a really good example of this team being different from some of the variations of the teams that we've seen the last 2 to 3 years or so.
Yeah, and they were able to win the game down the stretch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was a game in which the Celtics were behind for majority of the game, took over in the fourth quarter. The defensive adjustments that we've already talked about, I think, did a really good job of shutting down that two-headed monster, guard attack with Mitchell and Garland. And then offensively, they were just, they just made the right play over and over again. One play I want to pull up here. Jaylen Brown towards the end. So I got some, by the way, potential assist numbers for Jaylen. He had 7 potential assists last night. Over the last 5 games, White is leading in potential assists, 8.8, Tatum 7.2, Brown 6.4. Over the last 10 games, Tatum 9 potential assists per game, White 8.4, Jaylen 7.6. Over the last 15 games, Tatum 9.1, White 8.3, Brown 7.1. Right. So if you want to talk about Jaylen Brown's development as a playmaker, if you want to just put him up with the other 2 better playmakers on the team and Derek White and Jason Tatum, Jaylen's definitely showing that he's starting to figure it out a little bit more, as we've talked about. But one play I wanted to highlight here towards the end of the game, they ended up getting the ball to Jaylen on the block. And Jaylen, his patience out of the post, man, it's something that I'm getting really excited about because you can't just, unless you have like an Andrew Wiggins from 2 years ago, not Andrew Wiggins this year.
You got to make sure which Wiggins you're talking about. You might be talking about Aaron Wiggins on the Thunder at this point.
Right. An elite defender, unless you have like an absolute elite defender, not a Max Strus, because Jaylen just absolutely ate Max Strus's lunch all day yesterday. If you put an elite defender on Jaylen, maybe you don't have to send 2. But with Jaylen Brown in the post, he's drawing 2 defenders, and he's making the right read over and over again out of the post. So this is the game sealing, in my opinion, game sealing bucket towards the end of the game. Jaylen draws 2 on the right block and skips over the defense to D. White. Little off target, but he makes the right play. And then D. White 5 for 9 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3 last night. Was money all night.
Brown baseline, looks for Cutter, goes deep the other side. Wow, of course, wow.
Right, on that play, it's Darius Garland. Darius Garland is on Jaylen Brown in the post, and they do a great job of recognizing the mismatch, getting the ball to Jaylen on the block. Jaylen's patient. Jared Allen has to sink over. I think Porzingis cuts through the middle to occupy the weak side defender and then to skip over the pass. Let's just watch that one more time. Pay attention to what the other guys besides Jaylen Brown are doing to open up that skip pass to White.
Brown baseline, looks for Cutter, goes deep the other side. Wow, of course, wow.
And the Celtics are getting so good off those slot and wing cuts, the 45 cuts, because once you're able to do that, especially in the pick and pop that they run a lot, Derek White is so good at cutting out of the 45 slot. To occupy any weak side defenders. And on that play, you see Porzingis flash to the middle. Karis LeVert has to pay attention to that cut, opens up the pass. Jaylen makes a perfectly timed pass out to Derek White for 3. And those types of plays, like for all the people that aren't acknowledging Jaylen Brown's development, it's just like, look at that play. Like, would Jaylen Brown have had the wherewithal to make that pass even at the beginning of the season? I don't think so. I think he would probably take that quick turnaround baseline fadeaway over Garland, and he's starting to see the level of gravity that he can have out of the post. It's just great to see.
And I think a lot of it's just like some of it's patience, right? Is not going for that first instinct, right? Maybe almost fighting that off to then get to, whatever the next. And you talked about this a couple episodes ago, like first making that initial read, like what's the first pass I can make, then what's the second pass, and what's like the best pass that I can make, which is what I think you just highlighted right there. And I noticed a couple of times, I think in the next game, I think he had a high assist number. I can't remember what it was, but he had a couple really nice hockey assists where he just basically same thing, kicked it out to the right guy, made a couple skip passes. That was a skip to like the next guy. And so it was just really nice seeing, Jaylen develop that. And something else that's, I think we talked about this with Adam passing the rock on the last episode, is sometimes it gets a little bit frustrating watching the Celtics offense. I think part of it's because you see the potential. Like you just highlighted, like the Kristaps Porzingis cut right there, which did so much to open up, the rest of that. And you have guys that, whether it's Porzingis, it's Holiday, it's White, like you talked about. I think Sam Hauser's a really good cutter, like, or just knowing when to cut. You know what I mean?
Sam's great at cutting. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think it's times when we see that it kind of devolves into, whether it's Jaylen or Jason, it could be, a couple different guys, going either one-on-one or like there's not movement collectively as a unit. That's where it becomes frustrating, because you see on that all it took was that Porzingis cut, and you saw the Cavaliers have to decide, do we leave Jason Tatum on the wing? Do we go cover Derek White? Do we double down because Porzingis might all of a sudden have a mismatch in the middle of the lane? And he had a dominant third quarter where he was knocking down threes, taking guys in the middle of the lane and shooting right over them. So now they have this 3 different decisions. And Drew Holiday is just hanging out. He's the other guy that we haven't even mentioned. So for them to have to make all of those decisions in a split second, I think that's where sometimes the frustration comes in, back to the conversation last time. But that was a great example of showing, what the Celtics had going last night.
Can I show one more play?
Yeah, go for it.
So I want to show one more play. Just kind of the chemistry between Jaylen and Derek White. One thing that I've noticed about Mazzulla recently is that he's taking those guys off the court at the same time and putting them back on the court at the same time. He seems to like the Tatum and Holiday pairing and the White and Brown pairing. So this play right here is another great example of Jaylen recognizing that he has that he has a knockdown shooter in Derek White on the court with him at all times, which I think is, when we talk about those potential assists for Jaylen and all the other guys in the court, the great thing about potential assists is you can get those assist numbers up if you're passing the ball to guys that can knock down shots, right? A lot of times Tatum has big assist numbers, or like 6 or 7 assists, because most of his passes are like going to Sam Hauser.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tatum will always find Sam Hauser if they're on the court together. That's where the majority of his assists, I feel like, they come from anyway.
Right. And I think Jaylen, if he starts to recognize that, hey, if I just pass the ball to Sam Hauser, that potential assist is going to be an assist. Same thing with passing the ball.
Got to look to that corner.
Yeah, you got to look to the corner. Here's a great play in transition. Another example of Jaylen Brown. I think this was his first assist of the game. Jaylen's in transition. We always talk about how Jaylen is one of the best transition players in the NBA. You'll see on this play that Jaylen has an opportunity to do what Jaylen does, drive to the basket and probably finish strong with his right hand, but he takes an extra half second just to let things develop, and he finds White wide open in the corner for a 3.
Holiday, I think, was the first to get a hand on it. Brown. Again.
What do you think? Like watching that play, Will, what stands out to you?
It just stands out to me that Jaylen, because usually when Jaylen will kind of make that, almost like pull the ball back out, it's always mostly for him to either go back in or for him to take kind of a, short mid-range type fadeaway, right? That's going to be his general MO. Rarely do I think you see him stop, pause. And this gets back to what I said. I think for Jaylen, for me, what I think is changing more, I think it's just the patience is just letting things develop a half extra second and fighting whatever that initial urge is. And then he finds Derek White, who, Derek White's just one of those guys that finds the right spot to be. He knows where to be. We've talked about this many times. And so I think for me, that was what stood out the most, is that I think if I'm watching that play, a year ago, certainly 2 years ago, I know what's going to happen. And it's going to be one of those two things that I said. Either Jaylen's going to weave and just try to force something up with two guys at the rim, or you're going to see him try to get to that mid-range step back floater, not really mid-range, but, in the lane, which was a shot he could hit. And he would have been open on that shot. I wouldn't have actually really objected to him taking that shot. But I think the better shot is, a guy like Derek White, who's shooting the ball close to 40%, wide open in the corner for three. I think that's the better shot. And so I think that's an evolution of Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I'm going to play that one more time. One thing I want you to pay attention to here is the initial defender that's in the play and Jaylen's pace coming up untransitioned. Because I think a lot of times with Jaylen, what we've seen in the past is he kind of has one speed in transition where he'll just take off, and no matter who's in front of him, he's going to try and go for that layup. Donovan Mitchell is in front of him on this play. D. Mitch has great hands. He's a strong physical defender. Jaylen, they have a good relationship. They like going back and forth with each other. I think this is normally a time in which Jaylen would have in the past driven directly into him and try to finish over him, but he's a little bit more patient. I think Max Strus gets back into the play. Jaylen kind of dribbles the ball past the nail over to the elbow. And as he's doing that, that's that spot that we'd normally see Jaylen kind of, look at the defense for his own advantage to score, right? And in this case, what he does is he looks at the defense and just reads the defense and just takes what's there, right? He could have taken the 15-foot jump shot. He probably could have driven in for a layup, but he lets that play develop for that extra half second. Derek White is so good at relocating out to the corner, and then he knocks down the three. Let's play that one more time.
Holiday, I think, was the first to get a hand on it. Brown. Again.
Jaylen Brown, Derek White chemistry, man.
He even had another guy. Drew Holiday was also open on that play as well, too. So just letting that develop, you now had multiple options that you could go with to get an open good look. So love that there. One last thing I want to touch on here, because the Celtics are going to play the Cavs again here on Thursday. And I really hope Evan Mobley plays, because I really want to see what this looks like with both teams at full strength. I'm assuming the Celtics will be at full strength. They do have a back-to-back on Friday against the Magic. So I do wonder, I assume Al Horford's going to rest one of those two games, or they're going to split up the Al KP teaming in some way. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I would love to see Cavs at full strength, Celtics at full strength. Is there any one thing in particular, as the cool part about these back-to-back home and home series is that it is like a mini playoff series. Is there any one either player or aspect of the game that you'll be specifically looking at? I know you mentioned the drop coverage earlier.
That's a good question. Let's see. Maybe the way they defend Strus. Strus got off a lot in this game. It seemed like we lost him, especially off of those kind of elbow actions and dribble handoffs up at the top of the key. I want to see if we top lock Strus a little bit more. Top lock, basically, for those listening, watching, it's like if he's coming off of that screen, rather than allowing him to get over the screen, you're just going to force him back to the baseline so that he can't utilize the screen. Basically, make him a backdoor cutter and having him finish in the paint or relocate to the other side. So just to see how we defend Strus, and then maybe Tatum. I mean, Tatum was 2 for 9 from 3. I think he was 9. Well, Celtics were perfect from the line. Shout out to the Celtics for being perfect from the line. But Tatum, I think he was 2 for 9 for 3. But as I watch back his missed threes, a lot of them were right on the money. They were either like back rim, but perfectly straight as an arrow, or in and out. I think he only took 1 3-pointer that was just like a complete brick, and that was the last one of the game. So I want to see if Tatum, because he had a great game. I gave him an A+, probably deserved more like an A, but I think for that game, he gave the game.
You're feeling generous.
Yeah, he gave the game exactly what it needed, which is why I gave him an A+. But yeah, I want to see Tatum kind of go off in the next game, because they don't have anyone that can guard him.
Yeah, no, I think that would be fun to watch. I think, like I said, I hope Mobley plays. I really want to see what this looks like. at full strength. So we'll see. We'll probably have something for that after the game on Thursday. So make sure you're checking the YouTube feed as well as potentially the Spotify and Apple feed as well come Friday morning. But let's take a quick break here and let's get into the Discord mailbag here first. All right, let's jump into the Discord mailbag. Once again, if you're not on the Discord yet, you should be. And it's been my bad. I have not promoted it as well enough at the beginning of these shows as I should have. But if you're looking for the link, go down to the description. It will be there for you. We are getting direct feedback from everybody, and it's been a lot of fun. So come join us. So let's start off with a recurring guest. Let's go to our guy, Jacob Ramirez. Shout out,
Shout out, Jake.
His question, I've heard that Kelly Olynyk might get bought out and he just barely qualifies for Boston to attempt to sign in the buyout market, even with the second tax bracket rules. How likely is it we pursue someone like Kelly? Is he the fit we need for our big man rotation?
I mean, Kelly Olynyk's definitely an upgrade as a third big, first of all, to answer that question. Like if you bring Kelly Olynyk,
that's the easy part.
Yeah. Like he's definitely somebody that can play in a playoff series. I would trust him on the court in a game 7. We've seen it before. We've seen the Kelly Olynyk game. We know that it exists out there. I love Kelly, man. I think he has a really good skill set. He's a great positional defender. He doesn't offer much rim protection despite being 7 feet. Can shoot the rock. He's like Al Horford light.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of what Kelly Olynyk can do on the court is it fits what the Celtics are doing this year. So if we ended up deciding that Luke was not enough or that we just needed more depth in case KP or Horford were to go down, if say God forbid Horford gets hurt, right? He's old.
Mm-hmm.
If Horford gets hurt, it's not enough to have Porzingis and Kornet. We would need a third big, right? If Porzingis gets hurt, it's not enough to have Horford and Kornet. We need another big. So I do think that Kelly Olynyk, if we can get him at the right price, yeah, absolutely, I would take Kelly Olynyk in a heartbeat.
So there's a couple of questions in both our Discord mailbag enter that revolve kind of around this question, right? In one way or another. You just nailed it perfectly. I think, and this is a question that we have coming up, like I think right now, if you just told me, hey, the team that's healthy right now is the team that you're going to have all postseason. They're going to be healthy. I'm cool with it. I'm ready to rock with it. Like, I think that would be fine for me. It's the situation that you just laid out, right? And that's where I think there has to be an eye on, KP's got an injury history. Al's older. Like, if one of them goes down, then you're putting yourself in a really tough spot. And even with them, the one thing that I think that this team, I mean, not the one thing, but one of the things I think they could be lacking is in certain moments when they need to kind of have a small ball 5 unit, there really isn't kind of that unit to go with. I don't know if Kelly's the answer. I think there's, I offered Xavier Tillman as a guy that I think would be an interesting fit for that role. This is somewhat the Grant Williams role that we no longer have to be able to go to a type of lineup like that I think at times could be beneficial. But I think Kelly Olynyk, and I think he's at the top of the list of if it's somehow possible, and I have not looked into the second tax bracket rule. I've looked at him from a trade perspective. It's really, really difficult, borderline impossible to make it work from a trade perspective. But I think without a doubt, Kelly Olynyk would be at the top of the list of potential realistic options. Of course, realistic only being if he's bought out. That would be at the top of the list of guys that if you were looking to improve the depth and be ready for a scenario in which one of your starters or one of your top 6 out of Porzingis and Horford is out, he's at the top of that list. So would love.
Yeah, but also, Will, I think Olynyk, if he were to be bought out, a lot of teams would be trying to get Kelly Olynyk. He's good, right? But the Celtics have the advantage of having had him in the past where he knows that he would come in and he would know pretty much the system, right?
Yeah.
I think we play a brand of basketball that would definitely fit him. And also he's familiar with the organization. So I think we would have a leg up there too.
Yeah, Coach Brad making the call. So, yeah, I like the question, man. Appreciate it. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. Keep an eye on Kelly Olynyk. All right, let's go to our next question here in the Discord. This is from RR23. What do you guys think of Tatum's declining pull-up three-point shooting? Do you ever think it will return to 2020 or 2021 form where he was a 37% pull-up shooter? For reference, I did pull this up here right now. So for the year so far, Tatum averaging 5.7 three-point attempt pull-ups per game, only shooting 28.6%, was just south of about 30% last year as well. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Um, that's a good question, man. I think Tatum's pull-up shooting, I wonder how it's defined. Like, are they defining his like step back three as a pull-up three? Because if they're defining that as a pull-up three, I don't know how they define pull-up
Hmm.
threes in the stats, but like I personally probably wouldn't define that as a pull-up three. I would define that as like a step back three or a side step three. So I don't really know. But in general, those are tough shots, man. They're more heat check shots. You would like to see Tatum probably if he gets like yesterday, his first three of the game, I think he had Jared Allen in isolation on the right wing, and he decided to shoot standstill three, right? Where he could have driven, he had the entire right side of the court to himself and decided to shoot a 3-point shot. It was a rhythm shot for him, in my opinion. It was right on the money. He just missed it. I think most of his threes last night he just missed. I think with Tatum, he's going to be one of those guys that will go through these stretches where he's going to miss a lot of those pull-up threes over a couple week stretch, right? But then
Hmm.
you're going to have those moments where he goes, 6 for 8 in one game, or he, over a 3-game stretch, he's going to shoot 60% on those pull-up threes. And I think with Tatum, all you can ask for is that he doesn't become over reliant on the pull-up three, and he's able to mix up his attack. Like last night, dude, I was so happy to see Tatum. Like, he looked so athletic yesterday, dude. He was shot out of a freaking cannon. Even the play that Jared Allen blocked him at the rim,
Yeah.
just to see him attack the rim with such ferocity, that's what you need out of Jason Tatum. It'll be interesting to see if Mobley plays, how that affects Tatum, and also against the Magic, who Tatum hasn't really played that physically against. Will he be able to not just settle? Because if Tatum is settling for pull-up threes, that's not a good thing, right? But if he's taking them within the flow of the offense for the most part, you're gonna kind of have to live with the percentages because he's a superstar and he makes tough shots.
Yeah, and it's basically the only area of the floor that he's kind of a subpar shooter, right? It is at least like looking at the numbers right now is from that pull up threes. And I think for me, I think you touched on this, the volume, maybe in depending on how they define it, that 5.7. Like I think there's always been a little bit of me that, there's a lot of like who's better, Devin Booker or Jason Tatum. I think one area that I look at is that Devin Booker is for me a pretty it's impressive in his shot selection from 3-point range because he's so deadly. He knows how basically unstoppable he is at getting to the mid range and getting to the bucket. And, he's usually more around 5-6 total 3-point shots per game as Devin Booker. And Tatum's going to be a little bit more in that 7-8 range. And part of it for Tatum is keeping the defense honest, I think. So I think part of that is just keeping them honest. So the attempts, I think, within themselves, they're weaponized a little bit within themselves. Just the fact that he's going to take them. And like you said, you can't ever rely on Jason Tatum not to hit shots, right? Because when he does, he's going to hit them in bunches and he's going to put 60 on you. So you have to respect that to a certain degree. But there is always a little bit of me that, especially over the last couple of years, has wondered if there is a way for him to maybe balance out the number of attempts.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's really hard to complain for a guy who's been top 5 in MVP the last 2 years, been all NBA first team the last 2 years, and this year is, sacrificing part of his game as part, like this is part of that whole leadership conversation. Like he sacrificed some of his scoring for the betterment of the team this year, right? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is back to that comment from the beginning of the podcast where we talked about, yeah, not everyone's going to average their highest number of points, but for the betterment of this team, we have now 3 guys that are right around 20 points. We have Derek White and Drew Holiday in that 12 to 15 point range every night. So to me, I'm not super concerned about it. Why it's lower, I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to
Can I ask you a
why it's
question,
lower.
Will?
Yeah, fire away.
So when you picture Jason Tatum shooting off the dribble three, let's just call it off the dribble three,
Okay.
because I'm just like kind of getting hung up on the term pull up three. Um, what do you envision him doing? When does it happen?
I mean, part of it's, going to be like in transition, him just pulling up, on the break. And
Mhm.
then it would probably be, off the dribble. It's going to be his kind of signature, step back to the left. That's kind of those are the 2 main shots that I think of for the context that we're discussing.
Right. And I think a lot of times it'll happen off a switch too, and happen against a set defense, right? Where he'll get a Jared Allen. He'll get a bigger person on him where the defense is set. He's at the
Yeah, that's a
top
good
of the
one too.
key.
Yeah.
right? He's at the top of the key. And Scal talks about this all the time, how difficult it is to drive against a set defense from the top of the key. There's just like not a lot of space. The way that NBA defenses are played, you basically are in like a 3-2 zone, like a tight 3-2 zone when someone is just in isolation at the top of the key. So it's kind of the shot that's available, and it's the easy shot to take. And, you know, I'm also picturing those happening under 10 seconds on the shot clock. I would like to see numbers on how late in the shot clock those pull-up threes are happening. But this reminds me of one thing that Andre Iguodala and Evan Turner talked to Tatum about on their Point Forward podcast, is they mentioned that this was something they would like to see less of out of Jason Tatum, and that the Warriors were planning on this, that Jason Tatum, when they were like, Tatum, when he's at the top of the key, he's going to shoot a step back three. He's going to shoot a pullback three, versus getting to his spot, getting into the mid range on the block, in the mid post, and just like being able to do what Jaylen Brown did at the end of the game last night, where he drew the defense and made the simple play. And if someone doubles, you know, you can make the next pass. If they decide not to double, or they're a little late on the double, then you can go to work, get to the line, shoot your little fadeaway, whatever it is you want to do. And I think that's the key, is when are those shots happening? Is he taking them in crunch time, or is he taking them in the flow? Is he taking them during a heat check? You know, because if Tatum's taking those in crunch time, that I don't love that shot. I know that we've had this discussion in the past on the pod. Like, I think Jason Tatum a few years ago was kind of becoming over reliant in clutch situations on that sidestep three. And it seems like he's kind of broken out of that habit. Like, when I see Tatum isolating, I used to be able to tell, like, oh, he's going to shoot the sidestep three, like in this moment. And now I think he's mixed it up enough where I'm not surprised when he decides to like sidestep into a Smitty drive baseline, like, you know, Euro step through the defense and dunk on people. Like, he's added a lot more variety to his game. But that's
his Euro step is so beautiful, by the way. I love Tatum's Euro
step. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's kind of like off rhythm or off beat, where like it doesn't seem like he can do it. Like the step that he takes, I'm like, how did you even like have the balance to go through the defense at that? How did you see that angle? It's pretty amazing. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, that's been a huge part of his game. But no, I like the question. I mean, I think it's something to keep an eye on. You know, like you said, I think like the volume of it is something maybe that could be a little bit different. He's up basically a full, however you're defining it, pull up 3-point shot per game from last year, and obviously the percentage isn't there, but it's, you know, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time here sitting talking about you know, complaining about Jason Tatum anyways. But let's go to our next question here. I like this next username here in the Discord, Abe's Mustard Place. I really hope that you own a business called Abe's Mustard Place. Because I think, if you do, let us know. Shoot us a holler.
Send us some mustard, bro.
Yeah, send us some mustard too. I just had some mustard on my sandwich today. I love mustard. We have a couple different types of mustard.
Hey, here, quick mustard question.
Yeah.
Rank your mustards.
I mean, I think overall, I really like honey mustard. Honey mustard might be number one. Dijon is up there because Dijon's very versatile. I like Dijon mustard a lot. We do have this kind of cool like jalapeno mustard in our fridge. We just like a lot of spicy shit in our house. Yeah. I feel like we have a fourth mustard. We randomly, like probably like a couple months ago, we're like, why do we have 5 mustards? And it's like just along the way of like being at like a farmer's market or being like in like some random like small town in Texas that's all like artisan craft shit. Somehow we keep ending up with mustard. So I know we had a bunch of mustard, but that's an off the top of the dome ranking.
No love for the spicy brown.
Oh, spicy brown. Well, spicy brown is great. Like if we're talking hot, like what goes on a hot dog, it's spicy brown all day. Okay. Spicy brown on a hot dog is
as a spicy brown boy. I thought you were gonna go spicy brown number one.
I don't have it in the fridge right now, so I wasn't really even thinking of it, to be honest. It didn't cross my mind. I do like a good spicy brown, but I feel like I almost exclusively reserve that for hot dogs. I feel like.
Yeah, and I'm not really sucking down the glizzies these days.
Yeah, I don't have it a ton either, but I just feel like I'm like thinking of like nostalgically, right? Thinking about like it comes.
Oh yeah,
like
Fenway.
Go
to a Red Sox. Yeah, I think it's Golden. Yeah, go to a Red Sox game. I think that's the mustard that you put on a Fenway Frank. So shout out.
You know what, Abe? Let us know. If your name is Abe, let us know. Let us know what our mustard takes were like and what your mustard takes are. I'm sure you have some good opinions on it. All right, to your question. with Tatum back to Jason Tatum, with Tatum being more facilitating, is there a chance he's missing out on opportunities to heat up and completely take over? Or does Mazzulla ball still allow for giving the ball to the hot hand?
I think part of this is the way that Tatum is kind of getting the full attention of defenses, where if he was trying to like force the hot hand, it would feel like he was forcing it, right? What if you think of the games where Tatum was super hot this year? I think the only game he was like Tatum mega hot was the Hornets game, right? I think
I
that's
think
the
I'm
only game.
looking up his game log right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one that kind of stands out to me. We're like, oh shoot, Tatum might go for 60 in this game. Yeah, I think that with so much talent on this team, there's just like no need for him to kind of go into Superman mode
Yeah.
all the time. Like I think what we're seeing out of Tatum and the consistency that we're seeing out of Tatum. Remember there was a time where it's like, damn, Jason Tatum just like can't even score 30 points. Like when is he ever going to score 30 points? And now he's just like every game, even when he has
He
a bad
averaged 30
game.
points last year.
Yeah, it's insane the level that he's gotten to. So I wouldn't say he's missing out on opportunities to heat up. And I think that Mazzulla ball, the guys are so talented that they're gonna recognize when guys are hot. And
Yeah.
like if Tatum is on one and the defense is allowing him to play a little bit more in isolation, and they're not just sending 2 to 3 bodies at him at all times, like Tatum's gonna have a few games this year where he goes crazy. But I just, I think the defense's first instinct at this point guard in the Celtics is take away Tatum and make him pass the ball. And then from there, you will see if the Celtics have the patience and the consistency to continue to move the ball and kind of take advantage of the advantages that Tatum creates for them.
Yeah, I mean, when this team's fully healthy, I think you answered it perfectly. It's just so much talent on this team. It's hard to have one guy go for 40 plus in a night, which we saw a lot of over the last 2-3 years from Jason Tatum. When it was really, I mean, we saw a bunch of games where it was 30 plus points from him and Jaylen Brown because that's where the offense was coming from, and those were, for the most part, the only options outside of, Marcus Smart is hitting some threes this game, or, Al Horford hit a couple threes or whatever. It was much harder for this team to find multiple layers of offense. We just talked about in this past game, you had 3 guys over 20 points. Derek White had 17. Drew Holiday had 11. Sam Hauser's, had another game with 3+ threes. So I think that's now either 12 or 13 games this season. I think 12 games that Sam Hauser's had, 3 threes or more. So he's getting you double digits every night as well. Like there's just more guys scoring the basketball. So yeah, just him only has one game over 40 points. But like you said, he's going to have some moments where he picks his spots. And, nights where I think the Celtics are maybe down a guy, those are nights that I would probably look to be like, oh, this might be a time where where Tatum kind of increases his output a bit. But I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's a fault by any means that he hasn't had as many of those takeover games. I just don't think it's been a necessity. But, I think to the last part of the question here, does Mazzulla ball still allow giving the ball to the hot hand? I think they're going to find that guy. And I think, one game that I go back to a lot was, I think in the Memphis game, which Celtics won, but it was, it was scrappy at the end. Like that should have been a game where I think Porzingis was 30 to 40 points, but we didn't necessarily keep going to him. So
Right.
I think there are going to be times
kind of like the way the Lakers just attacked with Anthony Davis against the Pacers. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like that. Or you even mentioned like something for the next game against the Cavs. Like, does Tatum just attack Strus? Now it's going to be different because if they have Mobley and Allen, that back line is going to be there to back that up. But when they have a clear advantage, do they just hammer that sometimes? And that will be one thing that I think they could do a little bit more, but we haven't really needed to in a lot of games so far this season. But I do think when those opportunities arise, definitely keep an eye out for it.
Let me read the next one and I'll kick it to you. This one is from Rob Williams, the third fan club. We are in that fan club
Shout
as
out
well.
to our guy, Rob.
Get better, Rob. I want to see one healthy season out of you, Rob. You can do it. I believe in you. Rob Williams, the third fan club, asks, is our playoff rotation set with Sam, PP, and Luke, or do you think Joe will explore Banton, Stevens, Brissett more? Or do you think he will go matchup dependent as we have seen a few times?
Yeah, so I mean, this kind of goes back to as we were talking about the whole big man rotation, and I said it. If you can tell me right now that our main rotation, which by the way, to Joe Mazzulla's credit, I kind of like the way that he's structuring the minutes with everybody healthy, where it's like Luke 8 minutes. Let me see, I had it up here from last night. I thought it was a pretty good breakdown. Jaylen was 35, Tatum was 40, Kristaps just below 32, Derek White 37, Holiday 34, Hauser at 20, Al at 22, Peyton at 12, and Luke just a little bit over 8. And I think those within a small range of each other, that's perfect. I think that's really like and you can fluctuate based on who has the hot hand. And so if you can tell me that we're healthy going into the playoffs, I'm very content with that rotation. I feel like we can, there's not a single team that I would be super worried about that we wouldn't have the ability to adjust and play with a versatile enough lineup that we could make adjustments based off what the other team is doing. And then I think, exploring those other guys that were mentioned, Banton, Stevens, Brissett, and everybody else, we've talked about it. Like, I do think that in certain matchups, there might be, maybe Banton gets some minutes over Peyton Pritchard because we need to stay big. We need to stay long. Maybe that becomes Banton. Maybe Brissett gets some run over Luke Cornett because we're playing the Heat and we need someone that's just going to be give that energy for 5 to 10 minutes instead. And so I do think those guys will have their place. So is the playoff rotation set? I'm kind of sidestepping here a little bit. Yes, if we're fully healthy, I'm fully content with this, but I don't think you can bank on everyone being healthy. So that's where I would say the answer to it might be no, in the sense that if we do have one of those top guys go down, specifically in the front court, and even to a certain degree, the backcourt, although Holiday and White just have such a great track record of being healthy that I'm not as worried about it, that I still would like to find an upgrade to adjust the playoff rotation set. But if the playoffs are starting tomorrow, we're fully healthy, I feel great about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think we saw a lot more of Banton when Porzingis was out. I don't think Banton cracks the rotation when we have a fully healthy team, because we have 9 guys, right?
That would be the matchup dependent, right? If we were facing a team where Joe just said, I want to stay long, I can't put Pritchard out there, we got to stay long. But right. I still think Pritchard more often than not is going to get the nod over Banton.
Yeah, and we got on Pritchard early in the year for not making shots. He's still really not making shots to the level.
Hit him last night at least. Yeah.
Yeah, but the level that you hope from Peyton
sure.
Pritchard, where that he can be like a 45% 3-point shooter and just be absolutely money. But he's doing the other things well. He's the energy that he brings, especially at home, is great. That this is in any team in the playoffs is like this. The role players play better at home. Peyton Pritchard plays better at home. That's just a fact. One thing I want to point out here, I'm pull up a play here in a second for those that are watching. I'm calling this one White Boy Stack. Okay, so a stack action, some people call it a Spain action, is just a pick and roll at the top, right? And then there's a second screen, and the second screener is normally a shooter. So in this case, it's Sam Hauser. So in this play, you'll see Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, and Sam Hauser in a stack action
the White Boy Stack.
White Boy Stack that results in a Sam Hauser 3. So you'll see Peyton Pritchard coming off a Cornett screen. You'll see Hauser set the back screen for Cornett, and then what happens in a stack action with the shooter is once they set that screen for the rolling big, they pop out to the 3. And this is an action, to answer this question. I think the playoff rotation, as they continue to build chemistry with these 3 guys on the court, because in the playoffs, you're only going to need 12 to 15 minutes with these guys on the court, and you're going to rely on that insane top 6 that we have. If we can go to actions like this, and we can go to some more split actions with Pritchard and Hauser, some more ghost screening with Hauser and Pritchard, I think we're going to be okay. So here's White Boy Stack.
Hauser to catch a shot. He buries it.
And I think what makes this play also deadly is you have Jaylen Brown in one corner and Al Horford in the other corner. And other times you'll have Jason Tatum in a corner, or you'll have Kristaps Porzingis in a corner. And you have like the 3.
And then you're running the play for your 3 white boy role players.
Yeah, 3 White Boy Stack could be deadly, because as Cornett is rolling, just like Cornette's really good at rolling to the basket. He rolls hard to the hoop.
He's been really good lately too, by the way. Shout out to
Luke's
Cornette.
been awesome. Luke's been awesome. So like if Luke's playing like this, I don't think we necessarily need to make a move. I know Adam's probably going to cover that with you tomorrow, but I want to play White Boy Sack just one more time for everyone that's watching here on YouTube, just so you can kind of like, visualize what we've just been talking about. See Al Horford in the corner, see how the help defenders are reacting to Jaylen Brown and Al Horford, the chaos that happens with Sam Hauser setting that screen. And also, what I'm going to watch for this time is the space that Peyton Pritchard has coming off that screen, just to see if he had the opportunity to shoot the three or if it just made more sense for him. Did he have to pass to Horford? Did he have to skip to Jaylen? That's what I'm going to watch for this time.
Hauser to catch a shot. He buries it.
Pritchard, I mean, he could have pulled that three.
He could have pulled it. I think he made the right read, though. I just think he made the right read on that.
Yeah. But White Boy Stack, I really like it. I think it's a great play. Rob Williams, Third Fan Club. Thank you for asking that question. Will, we're 50 minutes in. We've answered the Discord questions. Do we go to the Twitter questions or do we wrap up? What do you think?
No, let's go to the Twitter questions. Why not? I'm having a good time.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Let's take a break, and then we'll come back. Maybe we'll talk some more WBS. All right. So we've hit the Discord once again. Go find the link. Come join us. But we still want to give some love here to our Twitter followers. So got a couple of Twitter questions that we're going to roll through, maybe a little bit quicker than we did the Discord channel here, but we're still going to roll through them. So let's start out with Mr. Zombie. Ooh, that's scary. All right, Mr. Zombie, what do you got?
Estación Once?
Yeah,
Estación Once?
Better you pronouncing it than me. I don't even know if that's the right accent, but we'll see. All right, Mr. Zombie. Does it matter with this current team that there's a clear hierarchy on offense, or just defined roles with balanced scoring / playmaking responsibility outside of Tatum? Do the Celtics need a clear number two? I think for this question, let's just focus on that last part because I think they all kind of play into each other. But I think do the Celtics need a clear number two is a somewhat of an interesting question.
The Celtics have a clear number two. It's Jaylen Brown.
Which is interesting to hear you say that, because your prediction at the beginning of the year is that Kristaps Porzingis will be the number two or will be the second best player on the team by the end of the year.
The question is about scoring and playmaking.
Okay, fair.
Right. Like on offense, Jaylen Brown's a clear number two. It's not a question.
Yeah. And the thing for me, though, is I do think at times Kristaps could fall into that too. And this is where I'll always say I think Jaylen has the toughest job on offense and is part of the needs to be thought of when he gets scrutinized, is that he has to be ready to step up in that number one position. And now with Kristaps, I do think there are going to be moments where he has to be okay letting Kristaps jump into that number two position.
I agree.
And he jumps back to number three. And that's just really fucking difficult to do. Like, that's really tough to do. And like, when you're Tatum, going into every single night, I'm option number one, right? This is what's going to happen. Like, I'm going to kind of dictate what else goes on. But if you're Jaylen, you have to like get yours, but then also feel out the game to see, all right, do I got to put on my Superman cape, or do I need to be patient and kind of go into a little bit more of a reserve role? So
yeah, and now that I answered my question dismissively, let me give it a real answer. So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, because I still see people clamoring, and opining for Marcus Smart. Derek White would not be Derek White this year if Marcus Smart was still on the team, right? Marcus Smart would have continued to play the lead guard role, and Derek White would have taken more of a backseat towards Smart. And with Smart gone and Holiday coming in as the new guy, being willing to play like the role that we kind of all hoped Marcus Smart would just play and just be okay playing. That's the great thing about Holiday. Holiday's better than Smart. I'm going to say, I know some people don't believe that, but he is.
No, he is. It's definitive. But.
Yeah, it's definitive. The fact that Holiday is playing his role perfectly has allowed Derek White to step up a little bit more, have some more offense responsibility. The shooting from Derek White, man, I would love to see a little bit more action where Derek White is entrusted to make some plays, especially out of high pick and roll, because he's getting so good at picking his spots, shooting the pull-up three. I would love to see Derek White have a little bit more of that responsibility, because he makes the right plays so frequently and the shots going down at an all-time rate right now. So I think Jaylen's the clear number 2. And then I want to see a little bit more responsibility in the shoulders of Derek White and Porzingis, but I think Jaylen's the clear number 2.
Yeah, I think that's about right. All right, let's go to our next question here. Thank you for that, Mr. Zombie. Let's go to Heartbreak Day at Delin_36. Who is looking like our toughest opponent come playoff time? I think this is a very apt question given the week of games for the Celtics that they have right now. Greg, I feel like I know what your answer is going to be. Is it going to be what I think it's going to be?
It's going to be the Philadelphia 76ers.
Okay, it is not what I thought it was going to be. Tell me more.
Have you tuned into the Sixers lately?
I tuned into them several different times throughout the season, probably not in the last, week or two. I was about to tune into that Wizards game, and it was already a 50-point game. So I was like, okay, I'm not wasting my time on that game. But the Sixers have looked very, very good this season.
They look great. I think the trade was the perfect trade for them. They don't need a third star. They have Embiid, who's seemingly like playing at an all-time level right now, improving on his play from last year.
If you're just looking at stats, they're better across the board.
Being a more willing playmaker, the 2-man game with him and Maxey, that's just pretty much unstoppable at this point. And then I think they now have the pieces to match up a little bit better with the Celtics. Tobias Harris I give Tobias Harris a lot of shit. He does a good job covering Jason Tatum. I think Batum was a really nice pickup for them. I think Covington was a really nice pickup for them. They have more length. They have more versatility. Like last year when you went up against the Sixers, it was like, who the fuck is like, they're going to guard Tatum and Brown with Tobias Harris, George Niang, and D'Anthony Melton. Like Melton is good. He's a really good defender, but he's 6'2". Now it's like, oh, they have Tobias Harris, they have Batum, and they have Robert Covington with Embiid in the back line. And Melton can kind of just like switch on to people as needed. Maxey is a willing defender. He's an active defender. They have these guys that even Jaden Springer. Jaden Springer's another guy that Kelly Oubre. Yeah, I forgot about Oubre because he's been out. But is he back yet?
Yeah, he came back. Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, with Oubre.
He was great for them before the car injury. I don't know what his stats are since he came back.
I forgot about him, man. Another guy that is like kind of built in a lab as the type of guy you would want to guard those guys. You probably wouldn't want to put Oubre on Tatum for a whole game, but you would feel okay with Oubre guarding Tatum if he got switched onto him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So their lineup, their best defensive lineup as well is a little bit scary too, where they could put out Embiid, Tobias Harris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, and Kelly Oubre. Like that's a pretty good defensive lineup right there if they just need a stop, or if they put Melton in for one of those guys. Mm-hmm. They're a scary team, man. I think the Sixers, this is the first year where I look at them and I'm like, oh, they're not the Sixers from the past where I never thought we could lose to them. Like I literally was like, there's no way the Sixers could beat us in the past. I think there's a way that the Sixers could actually beat us this year. So they're the team that I'm probably most worried about. And then next would probably be the Magic, just because we don't play them that well.
Yeah.
No, yeah. But I think the Sixers with Embiid and Maxey, that's just terrifying to see for 7 games.
Yeah. And I mean, the Sixers really have looked like a different team. That is definitely, so the Sixers, for me, it's still reshaping my mindset towards the Sixers, even though when I've watched them this year, it's noticeably been different. And, I think just removing Harden and being able to unleash everybody else. Like Tobias Harris has been way better this year, knowing that he's in the role that he's in, and being able to remove Harden. Now, like you said, Max is a willing defender. But one of the things that's always big for me is you can have one guy that's consistently on the court that's a below average defender. As long as they're giving you effort, you can get by with that. But when you have multiple guys, that's when I can't take you seriously if you're in that top contending team. And so now removing Harden, whether it's Melton, whether it's Oubre, whether whoever else is going to be other than all the guys that you listed, they're all going to be capable at best defenders, right? So they're going to have everyone out there that can defend multiple positions too, which I think is pretty key for this team. Is that a lot of those guys can kind of guard either 2 through 4 or 3 and 4. Batum can kind of guard 4 and 5. So I think that's really important. So I think the Sixers are there. I think a little bit of me still has that, well, we kind of have the Sixers number, even though it is a different team. So then for me, I thought you were going to go Orlando. I think it's just too early with them. I don't think that they're quite there yet. But as we talked about recently, I think the Heat and Magic kind of play a similar way that get into, issues that the Celtics have playing with that physicality, right? But the biggest difference being the Heat have Jimmy Butler, who's a top 10 guy, and
Yeah.
they have Bam Adebayo, who's a top 15
Yeah,
to
the
20
Heat the
guy
Heat
and is a top 2, 3
it
defender.
goes in my mind, it goes Sixers, Heat, Magic.
So I would put the Bucks above the Magic. I'll get to them in just a second here. I know you're kind of out on them already, but I think for me, Heat is right there, partially just because part of the scar tissue is just I can't let that go. And I think that they potentially have a move to make. And this is the segment that I want to do at some point with you and Adam about all the guys that are on the market. Like, I think the Heat are the team that I mostly look at that scare me about them going to get, even if the fit's a little bit weird, whether it's Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, not really Zach LaVine. I don't know about DeMar DeRozan, certainly Alex Caruso, but like some of these guys that are floating out there, some of those guys depending on what the Heat would have to give up, do really scare me about what that team starts to become. So I think I'd start with the Heat. I think the Sixers are right there. And I get your feelings on the Bucks. I'm not going to get there quite yet. Giannis, I think, is still a top 3 guy in the league.
Bro,
And
they
the
can't
part
guard anyone.
so for the most part, I am with you. However, in the clutch, they do have very good statistics for both offense and defense. They're the best net rating team in the clutch in the entire NBA. And when I look at the Celtics team, we talked about in the game against the Cavs last night, they finished, right? They played pretty solid, even down the stretch, a relatively tight game. I still need to see a little bit more of the Celtics in those clutch moments to feel fully secure. And that's an area where I think the Bucks actually do have the upper hand on the Celtics. I think the Celtics can pull away. The Bucks are not going to pull away from the Celtics. The Celtics can pull away from the Bucks in a game. And I think a lot of this is all going to hinge on Chris Middleton, who I am completely not sold on right now as to whoever he is at this point. So TBD on that. But in the clutch, I do think Dame is still one of the best clutch players in the league. I think combine him with Giannis and Giannis's ability on the defensive end. And if you look at, like I said, their offensive and defensive ratings in clutch situations right now, they're one of the best teams in that spot. So if they keep it close, I still have worries of, like we said, this team, the Celtics team is different, but we've still seen glimmers of that looked a little familiar down the stretch sometimes. You look at like that Indiana game. And so that's what worries me with the Bucks is that they're still figuring it out. I don't really know if they have any moves to make. So that's what makes me feel a little bit better. That I think it all just hinges on if Middleton can get back to some semblance of who he is, they could be scary. But I'm not ready to write the Bucks off yet, just because if they keep it close, I think they absolutely have a chance to go steal some games. And they almost came back in that game against the Celtics a couple weeks ago and stole one late because the Celtics weren't able to, despite having that massive lead, weren't able to close it out. So I would put it as, for me, I'm going to go Heat 1. I'm with you. I got to put the 76ers 2 right now. I go Bucks 3, and then Magic, I'm going to go a distant 4th because I just think it's too young. It's a year or two too early for them to take it in the 7-game series. But talk to me Monday morning. Maybe I'll have a different answer for you at that point.
All right, let's go on to our next question. There's a few questions from our guy, Diogo da Costa, NBA.
Which I believe, by the way, is a fellow Brasileiro. So shout out to you, my guy.
Shout out to Brazil. Okay, so he has 4 questions here. I'm going to read all 4 questions. Which big can we realistically get? Could it be on the trade market or buyout? And I feel like we kind of covered that already with the Kelly Olynyk conversation. And I think you and Adam had this conversation a couple pods back.
We had
so go
Xavier
back onto our
Tillman, Andre Drummond. Do you have any other name that you just want to throw in there?
No.
That you particularly looking at? Okay, we've got to cover that. So keep going.
Second question. Having to choose from one of the two, would you prioritize rim protection or spacing with the new big? Okay, that's a good question. I would probably say I would probably say versatility, honestly, versus rim protection. I want someone that can, like Xavier Tillman, for example, if we were to get a
which
Xavier
is neither
Tillman,
he's neither of these answers, but he's kind of the guy that I'm looking at.
right. He's a little bit more versatile on the defensive end, like a ground bound positional defender, right?
Yeah.
I think someone that can switch out when needed, I think is someone that I would probably want. Like Olynyk can do that to some degree. I think Olynyk probably functions better a little bit, at the level of the screen or a little bit below the level of the screen versus a switch or anything like that. But I think Olynyk is probably the type of player, like dream scenario, the Celtics get Kelly Olynyk back on the squad.
Yeah, like I said, he's at the top of the list. I mentioned before my guy Santi Aldama. I think he's kind of in that same vein. Like that would be.
But I don't think the Grizzlies are getting.
It's
rid
not
of
happening. Like I
Aldama.
said, yeah. I mean, that's why I go to it. They have about 4 guys that could fit this description. I think Xavier Tillman is the most realistic and the one that would actually make an impact on this team if the Celtics were to find a way to do it. But yeah, I think to my point, Aldama, Olynyk, both guys that I would be very surprised if they ended up in Boston. Olynyk, I wouldn't hold my breath that Olynyk ends up in Boston because I think someone will trade for him. His contract's not crazy. Someone's going to offer something because we can't trade for him. So I wouldn't expect that to happen. So out of the two, I mean, I guess spacing would be where I lean, but I'm with you. Like I look to a guy that provides versatility in multiple ways would be preferred over, because we're looking at just prioritizing rim protection. That's maybe someone who's more veteran than Nemius.
Like Cody Zeller.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of like Adam had Andre Drummond as a suggestion. I'm out on the Andre Drummond suggestion. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's a really tough spot, and that's why it's like, okay, if we're gonna go give something up, like, are we actually getting anything better than Luke?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an interesting question. Yeah, he's been really good. So I think we both would lean versatility. If I had to absolutely select rim protection or spacing, I guess it's spacing because then that kind of keeps at least with the Porzingis, Horford, if they're filling in for one of those guys, you can kind of keep that same flow going. But yeah, I think that's where we'd fall on that. So let's go to the third and fourth questions here that we had from Diogo.
Okay, so will Jordan Walsh be impactful this season? Which two-way contract player has a chance? So the two-way contract players right now are JD Davison and Keita?
And Keita, yep.
Okay. So first question, Jordan Walsh, will he be impactful this season? I don't see it this season. There's a lot of intricacies that I think requires a full season with the squad itself to make sure that you're ready to play with the chemistry that's building already with the team, right? To ask Jordan Walsh to expect everything that's happening in the G League, which he's been great by all accounts, to come in and just like fit into this team, I think is going to be pretty difficult for him to do. I think he needs he's 19, right? I think he needs another year to let his body develop, to get that 3-point shot even more consistent than it looks right now. I love his athleticism. As I said, the way he moves on defense reminds me of Andre Iguodala. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he'll be very impactful in the G League.
Yeah, I mean, I to be full disclosure, I've seen the stats, I've seen some of the highlights. I've not been tuning in to Jordan Walsh down in Maine. Like you said, by all accounts, seems like he's doing well. But let's circle back to this question next season. Is kind of my thought process on it.
Or maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe somebody gets hurt for
a
month or two, and we're like, you know what, Jordan Walsh, here's your chance. Play for a month. And like maybe there's the impact as he steps in when someone gets hurt.
Right. Of course, that's a possibility. But for me, I think I'd be asking this question more so if it really felt like Mazzulla felt the need to pigeonhole, whether it's Brissett or Stevens or Svi, into a certain, wing role, which we haven't seen him. He really does not feel the need to do that with any of those guys. So to me, that does not seem to be a priority where Mazzulla is like, I gotta find another wing that we can have to step in and play with our main rotation right now. And if he kept searching for one of those guys to be an answer and didn't feel like it was there, then maybe I'd feel like, maybe he's going to say, Jordan, I'm going to give you a shot here, man, before we go hit the trade market. I'm going to give you a shot. But if those guys aren't even getting, minimal, each week that the Celtics go by, you cannot expect to see any of those guys on the court, right? Like it's surprising when you see Brissett, Stevens, and those other guys. So I just think Walsh is going to be a developmental project this year. So I don't see it from him. And then to the second question, which is zooming out on all the two-way contract players. We've seen Nemius Keita in 2-3 games this year. That's the one guy. JD Davison, I don't see that happening.
No, he's not going to surpass Pritchard.
Yeah, he's not going to surpass Pritchard. He's not going to surpass Banton either, as far as just looking at the guard depth. I don't think.
Yeah, it's too little.
It's too little. And then with Nemius, we'll see. Super raw. We got really excited that one night where he looked like Mitchell Robinson with a whole bunch of offensive rebounds. But he would be the only one, I would say, with a fringe chance. I'm including Jordan Walsh in these two-way contract players, even though he's not, but because he's down in Maine all the time. he'd be the one with a fringe chance. But my guess is that if we haven't seen him get a ton of opportunities with KP being out, with Horford, typically not playing back-to-backs, my best guess is the Celtics are probably going to evaluate the trade and buyout market for depth as opposed to leaning into Neemias Queta. We're a quarter of the way through the season, so I think if they were going to give him more of a look, you would have probably already seen a few more spot runs here and there. But
yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Okay, let's go on to the last question
here. Yeah,
do you want to take a stab at pronouncing that first name?
Yeah, shout out to my guy, Guilherme Tice, which, by the way, I've always found it fascinating how much Celtics fans love Daniel Tice. Like, he's cool and all, but people fucking love
there's
Tice.
that one account that's like Daniel Tice fan club.
Yeah, dude. And like every time there's the big discussion, it's like if you just mention Daniel Tice, I think we're gonna get like 1,000 more hits on YouTube if we just make it about Daniel Tice, because Celtics fans just fucking love Tyson. Like, he's cool, I get it, he's fine, but we've seen it twice. Like, I don't really know what we would be doing with it. Anyways, our guy at Guilherme Tice here. A proper evaluation of Mazzulla this season. His coaching seems as crisp as Derek White's impact on the game.
Okay. Interesting.
Where you want to go with that one, Greg?
Mazzulla's been better. Like, no doubt he's been way better than he was last season. I think I wonder how much of that is him being comfortable, as he's spoken to multiple times, as Mike Gorman alluded to on our pod with Mike, and how much of it is the built out staff that he has around him that's giving him the support that he needs. Because I would agree, in general, I haven't had an issue with like any of the coaching this year. I think that during an 82 game season, you try a lot of things out, and he's not just like, so he's not as stubborn as he was last year. Like, he'll call timeouts occasionally. He doesn't always call timeouts, but he will call timeouts occasionally. It seems like he's kind of, the philosophies that he had on coaching, he's not looking at them as completely black or white. He's seeing more shades of gray this year, I think, is so important.
Oh, he's definitely a shades of gray guy.
Yeah. And I would
yeah, there you go. It's all good.
I would say
maybe even 50.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Okay, you go. I like Mazzulla's development this year. I don't know that I see him coaching the Celtics for the next 20 years, as Mike Gorman said, but
yeah, that was bold.
He's not someone I'm ready to give up on at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to fit.
Which is a lot better than last year.
Yeah. We were ready to write him off at that point. But again, we were ready to write Ime off as well, too. We had a breaking point with Ime in that first year as well. So I don't know if it's going to be a proper evaluation of a Mazzulla this season, but I'm with you. Like, I think there's definitely strides that have been made by Mazzulla. Even just using this most recent game, talking about how he changed up, that drop coverage towards the end of the third quarter and into the fourth, right? Like, I don't think we really saw a lot of that from Mazzulla. It was just, no, trust in the numbers. This is the game plan. We're gonna stick to it. And part of that, as we saw, it really, really helps when you have a full coaching staff, when you actually have input from, guys like Charles Lee, guys like Sam Cassell. And we constantly hear it referenced on the broadcast of what they're bringing to this team, the diversity in thought that they're bringing to this team, being able to have different opinions that are really meaningful for, once again, a guy who's the same age as Greg and I, like Joe Mazzulla. Let's not forget, he's in his mid-30s. Al Horford is older than this man, right? Like, this is another guy that LeBron James, that was a question that got brought up and went kind of viral a week or two ago. Like,
right. And let me jump in real quick. When you bring up his age, this reminds me of Spo. When Spo first took over the Heat, Spo was a video coordinator for a few years. I remember watching Spo be Dwayne Wade's like pregame workout partner when I went to a game back when I was in high school. Spo was just some like handsome dude on the sidelines, and then all of a sudden Pat Riley retired. I think Riley retired, or I think it was Stan Van Gundy, right? It was Stan.
Mm-hmm.
Riley came down, and then Riley retired and elevated Spo into the head coaching position. And when the Heatles started, right, everybody was like, "Oh,
here comes Riley again."
Riley's going to come back down because Spo's not going to be able to handle all these people." And Riley was steadfast in his belief in him. And
I think dead ass right.
He's been dead ass right. And I think Spo's probably the best coach in the league right now. So if Brad Stevens believes in Joe Mazzulla and he really thinks that he's like the guy, I'm going to trust Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens knows a lot more about basketball than anybody that's talking on this podcast or listening to this podcast. So I'm going to trust Brad Stevens. Mazzulla's shown a lot of improvement from year 1 to year 2. I didn't think that was possible because he was so goddamn stubborn last year. I could not stand Joe Mazzulla last year. So the fact that I'm saying this, I think means a lot because I was really out on Mazzulla last year as a coach. And I think that his development this year it's a breath of fresh air, man. Something that Joe Mazzulla's mouth tape apparently helps him with.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mazzulla, he's tied into this, and I haven't said it in a while, but I said it a lot in the preseason, the first couple, during training camp. This is a 2-year window for this team. I really believe that this is a 2-year window for this specific group of this team. And if they don't win a championship in 2 years, there's unfortunately for, whether it's fair or not, there's going to be 2 main fall guys. It's going to be either Joe Mazzulla or it's probably going to be Jaylen Brown. Fair or not, those are probably going to be the 2 leading candidates to be the fall guys for if there's change that needs to be made if they haven't won a championship in 2 years. So I'm perfectly fine with the development of Joe Mazzulla. I think let's see how this plays out. We're a quarter away into the season. We got a lot to go, and I mean there were different points last year where we thought we saw things changing, and it got really frustrating at a certain point. And then when we had a chance to sit back, it was like, yeah, man, it's pretty hard to do this job by yourself. And not that he was by himself, but did not certainly have the help and the staff that he has now. And I think it's making a very big difference. So even if you're still not fully in on Joe Mazzulla being the head coach, give it some time. I do think that if you really look for it, there is going to be improvements, and we'll have to wait and see. I think he's, like you said, I don't know if I'm going to back the 20 years that Mike Gorman's in for, but I think he's going to be the guy for this year, next year, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I think this year and next year, Joe Mazzulla will be the guy for the Boston Celtics. So
yeah, and everyone that's so overly reactionary to every single game, just try not to be that way in an 82 game season.
A tough way to live.
Just go 10 games at a time. Try to look at things 10 games at a time, because if you go game to game, we weren't, let's just be real. Celtics fans were not watching and having this much discourse about the team 20 years ago. If we were having this much discourse about the team, we would have been absolutely fucking crazy. It's just the way that people talk about everything is so reactionary these days. And Mazzulla's going to have some games where you vehemently disagree with his decisions, right? And that's okay. That he'll have a game here to here. That happens. Just give him some time, let him crunch all the numbers, let the coaching staff watch film, and just look for signs of improvement as we are with everybody on the team.
Yeah, and if you want to test out a take, come do it in the Discord channel. We'll tweak it with you. We'll help you get there. So
yeah,
come check it out. Join us in the Discord. We'll have some fun. This is a good mailbag, Greg. I had a good time doing this. Obviously, went a little bit longer than we intended, but hey, why not? It's kind of a weird scheduling week. So this is going to be probably the one main podcast that we put out. We'll try to put out a recap after Thursday, and then I won't be on the Sunday podcast, but you and Adam will have something for everybody Sunday, Monday. But this has been fun. Discord mailbag, Twitter mailbag, Celtics, Cavs coming up Thursday. Greg, for those listening on the audio version, what are they going to hear on the way out?
You're going to hear some music from my band down here in Austin, Texas. We are called Black Sheep Optimists, and this one is called Get This High. Peace, everybody.
Peace.